Testing, one, two. Anybody hear me? Thanks. Could somebody say something?
Hey, John.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
No worries.
Oh, good. Good, John Goldner.
Hello, John Byrne. It is, but everybody disappeared for a minute.
Yeah,
Oh, I like your glasses.
thanks. Yeah. Going Ben Franklin for today's meeting.
I hate having to wear glasses, but I like different pairs.
Me too.
How do you hear, John?
Why is it?
How do you hear, John?
Hey, I could hear you now.
Okay, good.
Are you guys
And,
still seeing me? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you're. I don't know what the visual equivalent of loud and clear is, but we can see it.
I like to use it.
How's that better?
That's fine. You're in good shape.
Great.
And Dan, how do you hear?
I have you loud and clear, Roger.
Good. All right. I would like to call to order the Alpha Town Council meeting of February 12th, 2025. Welcome all. And we will start with citizen input. Are there any citizens who would like to address us today? Oh, yes, please. Step to the podium and state your name and then talk.
Well, hello, my name is Sydney Smith. I was here about a year ago, and I am a student at the University of Utah, and I've been involved with some discussion around the transportation issues in Little Cottonwood Canyon since about 2021. It's been an issue that I'm very passionate about since I grew up in Mount Little Cottonwood Canyon. And more recently, I've been an intern at Canyon Guard. It's been really interesting to be able to see the amount of students my age who are very passionate about this issue as well. We've grown the internship program quite extensively at Canyon Guard in different capacities, and it's been a great learning opportunity for me. But when we came and talked a year ago, there were a couple of points that I made that I just wanted to highlight again. I think that it's very important to be able to protect the ecosystem as it is right now from Little Cottonwood Canyon for future generations. Because those people that are gonna procreate in the future have a right to be able to experience this in the way that we're privileged to today. And there's been a lot of concern with what the infrastructure in Canyon could do to that scene. And especially with the implementation of a gondola. The fact is, gondola is not going to reduce congestion, it's not going to reduce road closures. In fact, there's not a solution that exists right now that would help reduce road closures, be that a bus or a train or the gondola. But there are some common sense solutions that at Canyon Guard are very passionate about addressing and trying to be able to have those be implemented in a timely manner. I just want to urge you as the town of Alta to be able to make your voice heard within this issue. This is something that I don't need to tell you, but it impacts you very closely with being here. The congestion not only poses daily inconveniences, but also serious safety concerns to people who live up here and people who are recreating here. So I just wanted to leave that with you, and thanks for letting me talk.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Are there any other persons who would like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, we will go to now the community enrichment. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. For people that don't know, my name is Sarah Gibbs, and I'm the Executive Director of Alta Community Enrichment. I've been involved with ACE since 2004 and the Director since 2006. Why am I here today? Catechisis of Salt Lake City has owned and operated Our Lady of the Snow Center since the inception of it being built. It was built with half community money, half diocese money. The diocese is no longer interested at this point to manage the building and own the building. And Our Lady of the Snows has been ACE's home since 1996. And we will be moving forward and being the new potential owner and operator of Our Lady of the Snows. We have been in conversations with the diocese, we've been in conversations with Forest Service, you name it, we've been in a conversation with somebody with the town, with real estate lawyers, the appraisers, and we're all just in the beginning steps. The vision for the building is gonna stay the same. I'm not gonna be like, oh, there's no road meeting, there's, no this, there's no that. We still hope that people rent the building for gatherings, for meetings. The Alta Lodge uses as a backup for weddings. There might be some little fun changes, like you might have to see a bathroom painted differently, but we, especially it's on a Forest Service special use permit. So it's not like we can just start doing crazy things, major steps to do any kind of changes. So as far as the building, we have no want to make it anything different. It was built to be a chapel as well as a community center. Like I said, half of the money raised to build the building was community money. In the mission, all the paperwork from the 90s, all states it needs to be a building for the community, and we really hope that this is going to continue. How are we gonna do this? We have a funder, and we will be working with the funder, with the Forest Service, with the diocese. And after the purchase of the building, we most likely will have to do some capital campaigns for upgrades and to continue to keep our employees at the building. It would still just be me. My employee will most likely go to an almost full-time job. And then we have our shovelers and our maintenance people. So I've been talking in depth with Connie Marshall, who is running the building, on the costs and the income. And the only thing I don't know, and there's only one line item I don't know the cost of, and my board and myself fully believe that this is the best step to take for the future of ACE and for the future of the building. We need to keep that in the community. We don't want it, you know, to go elsewhere. We also have an endowment that can tie us over if like no one wants to help us put in anything, anything new. You know, the question of, is ACE the right person to own this building? The answer is yes. We're not going anywhere. Like, we might be small, but we are so strong. I really believe that ACE is one of the strongest backbones within the community. And we are the right choice to be a potential owner, the owner of Our Lady of the Snows Center. We're as old as the building. So a lot of people don't realize like how long ACE has been around. We currently do 175 events. We have a grant program, a mural program. We support the Alta School. But this is truthfully the first time this is like really public. So I really hope that this news everyone is in agreement with and can support us, and that Our Lady will be soon the future actual home for ACE instead of all over the town. So thank you, and I don't know, I can answer questions if people have questions.
I don't, oh, sorry.
Okay.
I don't, it sounds like this all happened pretty quickly. Would you look to move your office over there, or would you still think you'd be in this room?
I like to say it's really bittersweet because I love that. There's something really calming about that corner. I mean, it has beautiful views. It's cozy. I actually get really sad when the like people aren't up here. But yes, at some point, everything will go down there. And we would just be housed there.
And then I know, you know, in the past with the town, we've talked about building a community center. Do you envision if you were to get this space that your needs and wants for that potential building that we've always talked about changing?
I would say we would stay in Our Lady of the Snows, and if we decided that we needed a larger area to do a larger you know, film fest. You know, at one pre-COVID, we wanted to grow. COVID happened and I realized that we're just perfect. We want to stay small. We don't want to get crazy. And that's perfect for us, you know, maybe potential use of a yoga room if that happens. But yeah, we would mostly stay, we'd be in Our Lady. Which takes, you know, a load off of any plans of ACE being a community center, a couple thousand feet maybe.
Dan or John, you wanna ask?
What kind of timing are you envisioning on moving forward with this?
The Catholic Diocese wants to terminate anything at the building on May 31st. And as you can imagine, it's absolutely terrifying for me to hear on December 5th. We want to go as quickly as we can, but as slowly as we can to make sure everything is done properly. And I'm hoping for a quick yet gentle process. Margaret asked if we would change the name of the building. I don't want to, and I really hope the diocese lets us keep that name. I don't know if they own it. And I don't know, like with churches, what that is, but I mean, it has to be called Our Lady of the Snows.
There are Our Lady of the Snows
Oh,
Catholic churches all over
and
the
other
country,
places,
so.
yeah.
There's one in Antarctica.
The front of the building says Our Lady of the Snows Community Center, right?
Center, yeah.
Center.
And
Center.
everywhere it's called the Our Lady of the Snows Center. It's technically not even a church or a chapel. It's a station. Because it's only like, there's only like 6 hours of masses a year.
Yeah, did you want?
I do have a question. So Sarah, I have the most incredible respect for you, and I think you are an amazing individual. And what you have done with ACE, we always say it's little Sarah's space, right? So what happens when little Sarah goes away? I worry that someone is not going to have your incredible skill set. So I worry that ACE would fall apart without Sarah Gibbs. And so
sorry.
it's a concept that the town owns it technically and leases it to you free or something. I worry about ACE's longevity without you, because you truly are phenomenal, like beyond phenomenal.
It's really kind of you to say, this was a large conversation with myself, my employee and my board, a very, very large part of it, like they stopped the conversation and it's like, let's talk about Sarah. And in my mind, I'm like, you know, that could be hard, but then we started talking to other people, even outside of like the board. And there are other Sarahs out there, and you know, maybe things can change, will change, won't be exactly the same. But we really feel that ACE will continue. I mean, my employee was like, oh, I like your job. The president of ACE was like, I like your job. So I mean, at least like, you know, we know that there's a few people within the community. And if I did leave, I would do a strong transition. Because one of the things about my jobs is connections, you know, like.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but then will there be a second clause so that if like ACE dissolves that it would go up for sale from the town, or would there be any kind of backup so it didn't become a privatized entity?
Yeah, and I think that, those will come into conversation with the building. If we, as we get closer, kind of taking things little steps, sometimes we take a jump forward and we gotta go back, but it is in our minds. And we have spoken about the town, buying it and us being a tenant. The slight difference is ACE has a funder to purchase the building. I mean, it just has tiny difference. And to tell you the truth, from December 5th to January 8th, that's when the town and I were speaking, and I was like, I could be a tenant, you know. So we're thinking about it. It's been spoken.
Thank you.
Can I
Yeah,
comment
yeah.
on that question?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, you know, I think it's hard to tell the future and hard to, you know, make, you know, a plan for every potential outcome. One of the reasons I'm excited about seeing ACE own the building is I think it's going to position ACE in a good position relative to the town and in a good position to be dealing with the town going forward, because it'll own the building. And I think that that's better for ACE to own the building, because they'll have sort of I'm reluctant to say the high ground in dealing with the town, but there'll be more of a dealing of equals between the town and ACE. If the town owned the building and ACE was a tenant, hard to say how that relationship would morph and change over time, and what the needs of the town, how that would potentially impact ACE. And I think it's more important to set ACE up for success over the long haul. The town's fortunes are going to, the town's going to take care of itself. And I think to give ACE the strongest possible position moving forward is what's in ACE's best interest.
Dan, you want to say anything or ask anything?
No, thanks, Sarah. It's really great to see you and your enthusiasm, and I think your proficiency always speaks for itself. So I don't have anything at this time. I know this will evolve a little bit, but nothing from me.
I do want to say that once we're like 100% in, I do want to have a community meeting. And have everyone to Our Lady, and people that have questions, or maybe 2 people are gonna show up, but that's okay. Like I want, now that this is fully public, like I really want it to be, and it's not that we own the building right now. The diocese still has to confirm on their side too, and get back to us. But at this point, they are not interested in owning and operating the building, and I believe we are the only bidder.
I have one question. What color are you gonna paint the bathroom?
All sorts of colors. Think lots of little murals all over the place.
We get the surfboard from the shower shops.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
It's probably in there.
I'm too scared to paint the main room yet.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, and anyone, you can reach out to me, email, text me, I'm an open book,
We know where you are.
it was hard to keep this secret, so.
Good, okay, thank
Thank you.
you. Mike, you're up.
Mike Owen, atmospheric, good afternoon, it's nice, toasty but cold, very cold.
4 years ago.
Day here, it feels like January. Well, we're a little over halfway through the season. I would characterize this first half of the season as lots of variable changes in the weather. You know, we started with a low snowpack, when the Christmas holidays concerned, it started to snow. And Mother Nature just thought weekends were the best time to snow for 7 weeks in a row. And you know, it's been challenging. We've had 7 red snakes, significant red snakes here that impacted this area. 3 of them had periods of gridlock that were 2 hours or more, where traffic did not move at all. And so that's been challenging. The other ones that we did have traffic, it was slowly moving. Main line is open on most of those, and you know, and it's not, I want to emphasize that UDOT, Town of Alta, everybody that's tried to keep the road moving and clear and everything, have done a great job. It really is, you know, some of these, the storm has just come in and dumped a ton of snow in the lower canyon at the wrong time for pulling people out of here and backed it right out. The gridlock days are all associated primarily with the main line being closed. It's just highlighted that, despite what we do to try to keep the road clear, you can have the road, the road was moving 30 miles an hour below entry 1 on one of those periods, but we had the main line closed, we still didn't move for 2.5 hours. Because it's just that configuration of when the main line is closed, all the traffic has to go through, from Alta, it has to go through entry 4, and we just become entry 5, we're just behind all of that traffic. There's nothing that really can be done more with the resources we have to change that. So that's really the sticky point. It highlighted that we had a lot of emails from people during this period of time. We got the most emails and hate mail when we had gridlock. You know, when people just sat in their car for 2 hours plus, and you know, it was things like, you know, Alta, you need to fix this. You know, it's no longer you know, when we said it's they won't come to Alta anymore, they're not gonna buy a season pass anymore, this is their last season. Snowbird is the evil empire. UDOT has done nothing to address your red snake letter. I mean, you know, letter after that, but primarily all on the days that they have the gridlock. Seems to be our observation this year has been if the traffic is moving, even though it moves slow, you know, that's more amenable to people. They understand that, but it's just really irritates people when they sit somewhere for 2.5 hours, and when they finally do move, Snowbird's completely empty. And so, you know, we're continuing to bring that to the attention of UDOT and trying to explore, you know, how can we change, what can we change in the future? There's the 2 main things that I kind of have come up with is, one is we need to try to figure out how to keep have the main line open between 3 and 7, the exit period every time when traffic needs to leave the town of Alta. And can we do that through just doing avalanche mitigation differently? Or, you know, what are the options to do that? But some way to, because when you look at entry 4 and all the entry points, it just doesn't seem like there's a solution you could put in place that's not gonna result in a gridlock. So it's kind of a configuration issue. We're really, you know, trying to work with them to get that done. The second thing is all of the roadside parking at Snowbird. You know, what we really need is a 3rd lane that allows all the Alta traffic to merge below entry 1. And then it would be equitable, a fair way to exit. You know, they expanded the roadside this year to under the auspice of, we're gonna make it safer for people to park and be off the white line and be able to help them get down to Snowbird. Unfortunately, you know, people are pretty smart. They figured out, let's just park at a 45-degree angle. And they started doing that, and now it's increased the amount of roadside parking between entry one and entry, which is not, I don't think that was their intent, but it's what people are starting to do. And so that's a little bit of a challenge. We need to talk through that and try to figure out how to do that. So either a downhill lane, or we need to use lights and metering to have it be a more equitable merge of Alton and Snowbird traffic. So anything the town can do to encourage that, we'd appreciate and support you with that effort. You know, Snowbird has done some things to help this year. You know, they are on busy days, they are closing entry 2 as an exit point, all entry 2 traffic, so not entry 1. We noticed on those days when we had red snakes that they were doing that, you know, they would still empty maybe 30 minutes before Alton would. But that was part of the thing that made it more acceptable to people, is when they got to Snowbird, there was still traffic merging there and everybody was moving slow. So it's that gridlock that I think it brings our community to our needs, brings public transit to its needs. It brings people trying to move around the town of Alta or even emergency services, and UDOT will not bring their plows up once we get the gridlock, because they're just gonna be stuck in gridlock too. So somehow to keep that moving would be great. You know, we had we're a little concerned with parking reservations have been interesting this year. Part of it I think is associated with the weather and the road conditions we've had. We've had some days on Saturdays when people have had a hard time getting here. It's taken 2 to 3 hours to see up the canyon sometimes. And we've had days where we've been fully reserved out, and we've only filling about 75% of our lots. And we've been trying to figure out, you know, what's that all about? What's causing that? Don't have an answer yet to really understand if just a bunch of people didn't show up or what the deal was. But that's a little challenging for us in that regard. So with the storms on the weekends, it's been a little challenging. It's impacted business a little bit. We've seen that our business is down. Going into Christmas, we were down double digits compared to the prior year. And you have to remember that last year was, I call it a Goldilocks year, because everything was just like perfect last year. Great snow, all the weekends were relatively, you know, clear. Didn't have very many red snakes or traffic congestion issues, and it was our busiest season ever. So compared to that year, we were down double digits. We've gained a little ground since then. We're only about 8% down now, but I don't anticipate that. I anticipate we'll be down overall at the end of the season time we get to. And if we matched last year, we'd still be down. So that's kind of where we think that we'll be in that regard. Let's see, here's what else I have in there. We have noticed, you know, with the buses, with the more bus service, they are filling up, especially they're really busy on those days that the road is challenging for people coming out. But the fuller they get, the slower they go up and down the canyon. They only can come up about 30 miles an hour, and the drivers now, especially on the days when it's slick and snowy, they won't take those buses above 20 miles an hour going down canyon. I think they've been instructed to kind of do that, since, you know, a lot of them aren't familiar with driving. And so we're seeing bottlenecks a little bit, big gaps between the buses and the traffic in front that happen. And what we don't like is people trying to pass those buses going downhill and going into the other lane of traffic. So there's some of that going on, which is concerning in that regard. The traction law that we've been working with Representative Benyon has made it through the House. First attempt it failed, and then there was a flurry of activity from Ski Utah and some lobbyists that we had and others, and they were able to get it. You have like a 24-hour window to have a revote, and they were able to have a get it revoted in the past. So it's now to the Senate. It's Senator Cullimore would be the one that would be. It's in his court to present that on the side of the Senate, and as far as we can tell, he's supportive and planning to move that forward. Never knowing the legislative process where it goes, though. And I appreciate, you you know, I really appreciate everybody's passion on, you know, Canyon Garden, other, there is passion on this transportation issue. It's not easy, it's not simple, it's complex, has so many different aspects to it, and that's why we don't have a solution to it for today, you know, we still have to figure and work it out. But I would underscore, I do have concerns as we're working through this progress, we need to underscore a very positive relationship, maintain a positive relationship with UDOT. I noticed as we've brought some of the issues up to their attention, there has been, it's gotten a little adversarial in some ways, you know, like you guys aren't, town of Alpha doesn't want to support anything that we're trying to do is help transportation, but yet they want to complain about the red snake and the traffic congestion. So what, Mayor, it might be good for you to periodically have a meeting with the head of UDOT, and just try to improve that relationship, and let's try to have a working relationship rather than an adversarial relationship. But I'm working on that on my end too, with UDOT, because sometimes when I ask them something, it gets them a little rile too, in that regard. We do have some disheartening news with the Forest Service. We had, you know, for 3 years, we've been trying to move forward elimination of the roadside parking above the Wildcat ramp and do a little expansion in the Wildcat lot to get that traffic off the roadside there. And they came back to us this last week and said they're not planning to move that forward. They think it's contrary to the Forest Service plan to add more parking within the forest, which is a little concerning too, as you know, what does that mean for the future in eliminating roadside parking? That's nowhere in the canyon and other spots, if that's going to be a similar position or not. So we're trying to understand that going forward, that is there. That might be one last thing I have is we have another storm coming, huh? You know, we're expecting maybe
End of the week.
starting tomorrow. Sometime we may have 20 to 30 inches fall between now and the weekend. So it will be a more great skiing and some more traffic challenges, I think, that are associated with that. The flip side, we've had some really good ski days, you know, in the last few weeks, you know, get to present themselves, and it's people have had an enjoyable time. It's just that we have a great ski experience here in Little Common Canyon, but what our challenge is the traffic. It's getting people to and from here, and primarily just on when we have weather and the main line is closed. You know, when the road is sunny, when it's dry and it's sunny, traffic moves relatively well. It's reasonable to get people in and out here. From that end, but appreciate, just want to express again my thanks to the Alton Marshal's office and helping on those days when we have all that traffic issues going on, because you know, I think it takes all of us working together to try to make it work and get people out of here. So thank you very much. Questions?
Yes. I very much appreciate your passion for trying to make the road better, and I'd like to ask where you think some of the following comments should go. So, as you know, I lived in Canyon full time for over 20 years. I needed weird hours because of my job. So this weekend, I was driving down to work, and I was like, whoa, they changed the parking at Snowbird. And all the cars are, like you said, at a 45-degree angle. I was like, yikers, it was wicked scary, because people are not going close enough to those 45-degree angled cars. And so they're making us that are going downhill at an unusual time. It was terrifying. So I, you know, a simple solution would be to have Snowbird have somebody stand out there and say, no, you can't park at 45-degree angle. I don't know when we're gonna have an accident. I don't consider that UDOT's problem. But it was terrifying for me as someone who drives a lot.
I think if you've shared your concerns with the Forest Service, you know, like I brought this up with the Forest Service and pointed out, well, isn't this an expansion of parking on Forest Service land if we're going from apparently 45-degree? So they're going to, you know, now I've mentioned it to, pointed it out to Fields, and he said that it's not supposed to happen. So, but someone needs to do something better, or we'll just,
Oh,
it will become the norm if it's not correct.
And it was yikers, and
So-
someone's gonna crash and burn and.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that the Forest Service will reach out to them and say, look, this isn't consistent with the forest master plan, correct that.
And then my second experience was on Saturday evening driving uphill. And, you know, I got a little sticker, I got the studs on the tires, and there was nobody checking at the bottom. And, it had snowed kind of at I think, a little bit of an unexpected time Saturday afternoon, and so it hadn't been plowed. And there was 3 rental cars that, I assume they're rental cars, because I don't know why else you would try and drive that thing up there. That had gone sideways, that, you know, there was nobody there checking, there was nobody who had plowed. Maybe it was one of those times when they didn't plow because it was a red snake, and so they're scared they're gonna plow over the other people.
This last Saturday.
Those
Yeah.
are free, those are free
So
5
this
minutes.
is a very,
Yes, 3 minutes. That was
so last Saturday was very
not-
interesting because at 4 o'clock, you know, but the lights, beautiful this morning, great skiing that day, people had a lot of fun. About 2 o'clock, the lights went out, we went to flat lighting. We went to flat lighting, people started to leave, which was great. The main line was open, the road was wet, traffic was flowing great. About 4 o'clock, the storm rolled in and it just started dumping. And within the next hour or so, we went to gridlock and we only had like 10 to 15% of cars left in Albion and Wildcat. And it took us till 8 o'clock to get that many cars out. And it was really just the storm came in and really had the road deteriorate. All the plows had left the canyon, you know, because it was at 4 o'clock, the road was wet and everything was looking. And it really we really didn't have in the forecast that this snow was gonna come in that hard at that time. And so it was kind of an unexpected storm. A lot of the people had left for the day to deal with it. Mike Moore and I got to talk about it.
So kind of a
It
one-off.
was great.
Who's the checker at the bottom? Is that UDOT?
That's UDOT, it's generally in the mornings, they have not checked it after that point. No, it's not UDOT, it's Sandy City that's
Yeah.
there to do that.
I almost called up, I mean, it was really terrible.
I don't even think the traction law went on until 4:30.
Yeah.
The storm came, it was only supposed to be like a trace to an inch storm.
Right.
Or a blur.
Yeah, it was a freak.
It was like 6 inches or something.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It was kind of a. I recognize that there are going to be times in this environment when you'll have situations like you'll have a storm coming like that. Or we'll have snow for 3 or 4 days straight and the main line will need to be down just for avalanche risk. But I think we can, if we all work together, we can find ways to keep the road open more consistently, particularly that main line. I think that's vital for the ski area, for the businesses in the town of Alta, you know, for the residents, everyone. If we somehow keep traffic, that becomes a priority rather than it's just easy to shut it down and send everybody down the bike path. I'm hoping we can make some progress in that direction. But we want to do it in a way that we don't increase the risk, you know, to do it safely. And it just make it so we can have a more equitable and fair exit. So,
Thank you.
anything else? Okay, thank you for your time.
I was. Were this problem easy, it would have been solved a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
So, there we are. All right, let's turn to the departmental reports. Any questions regarding the departmental reports?
Is Jay there? I can't see in the back.
It's not here, but Andy is. Another appointment. But
I just want as an observation, not a question. I thought it was I'm so glad that UFA had the opportunity to send 8 firefighters down to help with Palisades and that everybody came back safely. So I just wanted to say thanks for sending that down during a crisis.
I will pass that along, and I'll say something about that later too. Any other questions concerning the departmental reports? In that case, I would like to go to the town council meetings, town council meeting minutes of January 8th. Somebody like to?
I'll make a motion to
There we
approve
go.
those. Are we approving all of this all? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the January 8th town council meeting minutes, the January 9th council retreat, and the February staff and finance reports.
Okay,
And I will second everything that Elise brought forward.
all right, discussion. John, you want to say something?
No, I was voting yes.
Oh,
I jumped the gun. I jumped the gun. Sorry.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor of this motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, any opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's go to the mayor's report. Last month there were very severe natural disasters in Southern California. While I'm not aware of anyone in our community that was personally affected, I'm sure there were those that were a degree of separation or two away from those who were. In my case, some of my former colleagues lost their homes in the fire in Altadena. I was heartened to learn that UFA sent some fire crews to the scene, and I was told they worked 24-hour shifts, which is something else. And I would hope, Andy, you would convey to whomever is appropriate our appreciation for that. If there's anything positive that came out of this, it's focused attention on the wildland urban interface, WUI, and our vulnerability and importance of having a response plan to protect our community before, during, and after a fire. And let's say we're on that, but we're not through it. On another note, the monthly SR 210 road meeting was held, which Mike referred to on the 5th, and there were 2 highlights. And I thought those highlights were the road worked pretty well for most of the month, and that there was a long list of improvements that UDOT and the person of Jake Brown had instituted in the last few years and made a very challenging route safer and more user-friendly. And that earned him a spontaneous applause, which was unusual for that group. He asserted with good evidence that SR 210 is the best managed highway in the state, probably the most challenging too. Okay, and as Mike mentioned, we're more than halfway through the 45-day legislative session. We're keeping a careful watch on those bills or actions that affect us. Much of this is covered in Chris's staff report. One success, as Mike pointed out, is the passage of the traction law in the House. We hope that will go on to the Senate. Sometimes things that don't pass are significant. A bill targeted at a certain person would have made it easier to remove the mayor. And that bill failed, and I've slept better ever since. So on to the ever popular astronomy report. Late last year, I reported a mission called Europa Clipper that will ultimately destined for Jupiter will fly by Mars in about 2 weeks. And some of the numbers of this are pretty startling. So here is a diagram of how this spacecraft flies by Mars. It comes in from the left. When I use your cursor to show where that is, and it is aimed at this little point up here where the cursor is now. And while it's aimed at that, it never gets there. Okay, because Mars's gravity starts to influence where it's going, and it curves around and comes out to the bottom. Nevertheless, people who work this game talk about how close it would have come to that point, which NASA calls uncharacteristically, since they usually talk in indecipherable acronyms, they actually call it the aiming point. And so NASA talked about how close we would have come to the aiming point had Mars not been there. And it needs to miss by no more than something like 10 kilometers. And for scale here, Mars is about 7,000 kilometers in diameter. And so to translate this into kind of terms that we can handle with, this is as if you start off on a big, long, straight stretch that goes to Wendover. And at the beginning, you aimed your car at what you thought was some target out there in Wendover. Okay, and you lock the steering wheel in place. Okay, and then you step on the gas. And about 2 or 3 or maybe 4 times while you're traveling, you get to tweak the steering wheel a little bit. Now, when you get to that point, you miss it by 3 inches. That's pretty close, yeah. Okay, so the next town council meeting is on Wednesday, March 12th at 4 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So it's gonna be light when we leave. Won't that be nice? All right, so that's it. It's my mayor's report, and I want to talk about a review of the 2025 town council retreat, which go to it.
I'll stand up this time.
All right.
We got this very clear now, so.
So your forward back will work, but no, right?
Right.
Just making sure that's what you were counting on. It doesn't go.
Depends on how I point the laser at the screen, but. Okay, well, I just wanted to take this opportunity to review what occurred at our retreat last month. Thanks again for taking basically a whole day of your time in month January to get together, just like we did last year, and spend some time talking about things other than the hustle bustle of the day-to-day and urgent business. It was another successful retreat, in my opinion, and I hope you guys feel the same. We had, let's say 3.5 kind of sessions in the event. We started off by acknowledging progress towards short and medium term goals and objectives that we more or less, the outcomes, progress toward outcomes identified in last year's council retreat. After a quick break, we turned it over to Craig for what was kind of the keynote of the event, and that was a presentation and then some workshopping on long-term budget project, means to finance projects, and new revenue options for the town to explore. After lunch, we dug into the mission and values materials that staff developed again at the council's direction, and had a nice workshop on mission and values. We didn't really have time to get to strategic planning as a standalone topic, but I am not too concerned about that, which we can discuss in a moment. So here's, once again, this is just a slightly updated version of my little work plan sheet that I developed after last year's retreat, with 4 key goals called out: stabilize the health marshal's office, improve our planning and execution of capital improvement projects on utilities in our facility portfolio, goals and objectives to improve administration and governance of the town, and finally, a variety of things to lengthen our planning horizon. So the changes to this, based on the last version we saw, are I went ahead and on my own added a responsible party column and then this timeframe column. So that might be a little bit new, and we can talk about some of that in the future. But just to highlight, I think we're making great progress. I talked to Jen just before the meeting to get an update on work to hire fifth Alpha Marshal's Office deputy, and I think we're making great progress on that. So we're making moves to order a truck, and we're writing a job description, and it looks like probably by this summertime we'll likely to have a fifth deputy on the schedule, which is great. So we're making great progress on capital assets planning. We're gonna have reports and recommendations in hand to take into the final budget to fund projects next fiscal year, water and sewer projects potentially, and also probably next phase of facilities planning. So long-term budget and finance, this, like I said, was the bulk of the retreat session. A couple of key takeaways, and I don't mean to, if you all memorized all 80 slides from the retreat report that are part of the minutes, I regret for making you sit through this again, but I just wanted to highlight what I thought the key outcomes were. The council wants a long-term financial plan. The council wants staff to put time and resources into developing that. The council wants to spend time talking about it, working through the issues. 30-year time horizon. I think we had like 3 groups. We had like 3 votes, and 2 groups voted for 30, and I forget what the other one voted for. So we talked about a number of new potential revenue sources. Most of them are on the screen here, and we did a little scoring exercise, and this is my rendering of the outcomes of that scoring exercise. The notion of reducing the size of the cash buffer in general fund, it was a little bit of a new concept to some of us, but I think we generally gained some comfort with using that as a mechanism to fund a project. Of course, that's kind of a one-time deal, but we do have a pretty comfortable buffer in the general fund, so that could get us a good ways towards one project or another. Property tax value equalization between residential and commercial properties, that's maybe a little bit of a political project, but it's certainly something we can look into. Implement a transient room tax, and we talk about this every couple of years. Not to get us off topic, but I do want you to know, if you haven't heard, that there is a bill, the legislature is considering a bill, HB 456, for the state to raise the transient room tax by 1%. Which could be a big deal here in Alta. The sales tax, total sales tax on lodging is like 30%. The state would keep half of it. Counties would keep half of it. Some of that county money may be made available to the local government, I assume at the county's discretion. So that's just something to keep on the dashboard. It could certainly complicate the politics for us of using an additional local option transient room tax to fund operations, maintenance, or projects. Finally, borrowing. We talk about bonding. Most commonly, there are some other options to borrow money out there. We talk about interflow loans between, for instance, the general fund and the water fund. There are also funding, low interest loan opportunities administered by higher levels of government, such as the state, the drinking water for water projects. So those are things for us to explore. As we program out as we decide what capital improvements to do and when. And then there are plenty of other funding opportunities that are available to us that we discussed. After lunch, belly's full. We had a nice discussion about mission and values. I think the key takeaways from the group input on the mission and values that staff drafted and brought to the council is that really they're pretty good. Maybe they're a little long, maybe they're a little clunky, maybe they're a little generic sounding. I think it's safe to say a lot of municipal government mission and values material is sort of generic. We're all fairly similar purpose organizations. Of course, here in Alta, we have a unique character and identity, and we want to speak to that in the mission and values. Finally, strategic planning. So I had hoped to facilitate a little bit of time in the retreat agenda to focus on the topic of creating a plan. I asked the council at the outset of the session to support staff in making a plan. We just didn't have time to address it. We got so much good work done talking about budget and finance. Lunch was really good, and we did a little bit of workshopping on kind of assigning timelines to some of the goals and objectives in our work plan at the end. But I remain committed to this idea that we need a planning and decision-making process that is not the budget, it's not the general plan, because updating the general plan, which is really our kind of foundational planning document as a local government, takes a ton of time and resources. And has some risks associated with it. It's a big policy-making project, and we need something that's in between those conventions. That's kind of a living process that we're always doing. I don't think we're lacking all that much. We're doing these council retreats. I think we have direction, staff has direction from the council because of these 2 council retreats that I don't think we've had in the past. It creates this really nice cadence to the year as well. Where I think it's this, since they happened in January, it provides this really nice platform to start the budget process on, and I'm sure it would be fine to do it some other time of the year. But that's just been a huge improvement for us, I think, and just having a little bit of removal from the budget process in the here and now. So we've got council retreats. We've been doing them anyways. I'd like to propose a work plan as part of the fiscal 26 budget, and we're working on guiding principles. So I think all that's really lacking is packaging that up and having the council approve it as a strategic plan. And we can work on that going forward. So what I'd like to do next is, again, I mentioned proposing a work plan for adoption of the fiscal 26 budget. You've got a bunch of work to do to develop the 26 budget. Jen's just going to introduce that topic coming up here shortly. We've got these capital planning projects. We've got the water and sewer planning project and facilities project underway. Those are pretty close to complete. So we'll have better information to take into next year's budget process. I wanted to call out that in that updated work plan, I put that responsible party column in there, and I listed staff as the responsible party for most of those things, but I do not mean to take the council out of any of that stuff. The council's role is to authorize the projects and appropriate the funding to execute the project the council wants staff to do. So really, council has a role in all of those. It's just that staff has more of a day-to-day role in making things happen, obviously, than council.
I don't think we have any council members who are so reluctant to give their own opinions on such things as they go along. So I don't think you have to worry about them hanging back.
Well, and I think part of the deal is that we have to facilitate that input.
Yeah.
It's really up to us. It's not we don't just sort of put you at the stand and ask you to fire away. So so for long-term budget and finance, we're on the cusp of having much better information about what it's going to cost to improve our water and sewer systems and develop sustainable facilities. So that's really the next step, in my opinion. That's the next step in understanding the picture in terms of long-term budget and finance. We will take whatever it makes sense to roll into the fiscal year 26 budget and the capital projects plan. We'll update our kind of out year capital projects projections based on the outcomes of those master planning type projects. And then I think what we'd like to do on developing a quote unquote long-term budget is just introduce that topic in budget committee meetings. It's a forum we already have. Just to talk about how to go about that, and Craig has recommended we think about being a separate committee because it's really not. It's not fiscal year 26 budget. It's really a separate topic. So that's what I envisioned for moving the ball forward on long-term budget and finance. Vision and values. Like I said, I think we're really close. So what I'd like to do is just take a couple hours in the afternoon with staff, maybe in a staff meeting, polish off some updates to those mission and values, that we brought to the retreat, and then bring them back to you in a town council meeting sometime in the spring, let's say in May. Strategic planning, like I said, we're doing it. I think we need to get through the budget process. And then finally, I wanna put a bookmark in on the topic of updating the general plan. We kind of talked about that here and then we talked about it there, but we really do need to do it. And I'd just like to aspirationally throw out there that we assume that that project gets underway in calendar year 2026. Which is 10 months from now. Do you have any questions or comments?
I thought the retreat was great.
I did too. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, even, and that was our second like retreat go around, so I feel like it was even like a little bit better than the first retreat go around. But I was bummed we didn't get to the strategic planning. I had to leave a little early, but I know you guys didn't finish to that. And I was just gonna say, I don't know if we wanna do like a workshop sometime in the spring or summer, or a half day to work on that. I'd be willing to do that if that's something that we can't address in a normal council meeting, if that's something we wanna take the time to work on, because we didn't get to it as part of the retreat. Cause I agree with you, we don't really have that, we have a general plan, we just need that avenue, and we've never had that as a town. So I think the strategic plan would be important. I mean, we could try, like, I think we could chip away at it, like you have a May council meeting, bring you mission and values, but I feel like if we could also just sit down for a couple of hours, either in a workshop and just kind of be able to wrap our heads around it and give you what you need.
That sounds great.
I think we could do that. Like I said, I don't know if spring or summer works, but.
Well, I think summer is kind of a natural time to do it. We got the budget done. I mean, there's gonna be a lot we need to do in July and August to execute projects and implement the projects that are funded in the budget, but from my mind, it's kind of a natural time to do it, so. I get that's right, maybe we start maybe that as well.
I'd be happy to participate as well. I think that was the one kind of disappointment that was pointed out at the end, was that we didn't quite get to that point.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a facilitator as part of that meeting to help us kind of like get to that where we can get to address in the retreat, or if it's just something that we can just sit down with the staff and work on.
I think we'll see how far we get with the budget and capital, improve capital projects projections. Have a structured conversation about long-term financial planning and see if it is something that we need facilitated for us. I'm not sure it is.
And then same with the general plan update. I don't know, like our next retreat, we can focus a lot on that, maybe depending on how advanced we are with these other things that we worked on at the retreat.
Well, it's something that I think we could do with like a special strategic session is have a council planning commission joint meeting. It's been a long time since we've done one of those.
Yeah.
They've typically been kind of reactive to something.
The last one I think was the base facility zone was the last time we got together. That was when I was just beginning on the council.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very reactive.
Right.
We were dealing with we were focusing on specific.
Right.
Ordinance.
I think I wouldn't underestimate how long it's going to take to digest all of the new information you're in the process of receiving regarding the water, the sewer, and the facility study. And the facility study, there's still some questions we're not even asking yet in the facilities part of the thing. I think the water and the sewer seem to be coming somewhat to fruition. I think you've got almost all the pieces on the table. It's sort of a question of seeing how they're all going to fit together and making a plan like that. But I see that as being not something you're going to do between meetings, that's going to take 2 or 3 months to. I mean, it's been a long time coming to get that information, and it's going to take a little while to digest it. So I just caution against too aggressive a timeline for that stuff, because I think it's important to get it right. And I think there, as you try to meld the funding questions and the results of the engineering work, there's gonna have to be some give and take there, would be my guess.
I appreciate you mentioning that, John. I know I said to you the other day that, the process of developing a, let's say $500,000 water line project entirely in-house is new for us in the town office. We're not engineers. And we'll find a way to, get that kind of support, but it's likely that we're gonna be doing more of that going forward than the town has in the past. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about. We're gonna have projects planned and we're gonna put them on the calendar and we're gonna talk about how to fund them, but actually implementing those projects is really takes some doing and some planning at the sort of sub-strategic level.
Yep.
Tactical level.
Chris, that's great. In keeping with John's observations, he's absolutely correct. It's going to take time and it's going to be iterative. I also support what Elisa's saying, some half-day process by which this allows us to do what John's talking about and what she brought up, which is really designed to give you, Chris, the things you need. And I will tell you, on the heels of the depth of the information that we got on the retreat from funding mechanisms or finance plan that's sort of marrying with our strategic plan, I think that's the critical part here for the town to actually make progress in the long term. When I think about 100 years from now, I think we're starting that process now. And it is, and I'll use your words, Chris, packaging up as a strategic plan, like we're talking about doing, and we're in process, and then marrying that with the finance plan or funding mechanisms, because they're these separate silos. We sort of approach them that way, and the only way we're ever going to make that progress is to marry them. And for the remainder of my tenure, I'll be pretty fixated on that because I think that's what's strategically really important for the town in a positive way. I mean, I think we're teed up for success, and these retreats, and even maybe we set up another type of committee or meeting that's focused on these to get that information in place would be key. That's a lot of rambling. I apologize. Turn me loose and I will speak too much. But I think that's where it's really important for us to marry those two things. And I feel good about it.
Any other comments, questions? I'd just like to add that I opened that retreat by saying, without authorization, this is the second annual town council retreat.
The annual part, very good.
I tried to make the soup, the cauliflower soup, which she made last year, and didn't come out with it.
Yeah.
I think I found it, but it's hard to execute.
Okay, next item is pretty easy, which is discussion of possible action on ordinance 2025-0-1 to establish a fiscal 25-26 town council meeting schedule. Any discussion of that ordinance? It is an ordinance, yes. Okay.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2025-0-1 for our fiscal year 25/26 town council meeting schedule.
A second.
All right. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Oh, excuse me, what's that?
Can I ask a question? Does this assume that we're not doing truth and taxation this year?
No, the reason I actually am doing this now is because it does assume that, and I wanted to kind of tee us up for that opportunity.
It's in
So,
August, right?
The August meeting, you'll notice on this is later because of the timing of when you can do, you have to have a public hearing, and then you can't take a vote until after 6 p.m.
Unfortunately, I'd be like.
So the timing of that, so anyways, I wanted to have that on everyone's radar for their summer vacation planning, etc. And so I just figured, why not get this done now?
Got it.
Cool, so
Okay.
this does allow for the truth and taxation this year, because we're sort of sticking with the every other year notion.
It does allow for that, yes. We still have to have the date adopted by the county, but I have requested it as an option. Doesn't mean we have to, the council doesn't choose, but it's on the table.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion of this ordinance? We have to roll call it, right?
Correct. Mayor Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Byrne,
Aye, yes.
Councilmember Ansel,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
and Councilmember Schilling.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. All right, shall we go to the budget process update? You,
Sorry, I was just making some notes.
Sure.
So if you'll recall, last year, the council adopted a budget committee and charter, and that was kind of our first go around with an official, we'll say, committee. The budget committee met series of 3 or 4 meetings, reported to the council, and I think it worked pretty well. We're envisioning a very similar process this year. Where I'm at right now is I'm in the information gathering stage, so I'm meeting with department heads, looking at vendor contracts, things like that, trying to just basically just get a huge information dump. But then the way Chris and I have been talking about it is very similar to some of the slides he was just presenting. Thinking about it in terms of wages, projects, and what's my third one? And different options for revenue sources. So we're gonna we'll work with the budget committee to kind of filter some of those ideas and work through the budget, essentially. Hoping to meet March, April, and May prior to council meetings, and we'll report to the council along the way.
questions, discussion?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Next item is discussion and possible action to adopt a wage comparable entities list. Chris.
Yeah, from here, I'm sure we're gonna stand up. No problems, actually, I'll probably stop. So we're about to get in the budget process, as Jen described. Our budget has a couple, expense budget has a couple major buckets. Wages and projects, and wages is a really big chunk of our expense budget every year. We've got 12 full-time employees, sometimes as many as 12, 15 part-time employees. The town's made great progress over the last couple years in improving in bringing wages kind of up to the market so that we can retain existing employees and compete for new ones. We kind of began that process, I would say, I think in the fall of 2022. We hired a guy by the name of Mike Swallow. His company Technology Net, I believe, is kind of a leading provider of public sector compensation analysis in the state of Utah. Almost every local government and many special districts use this service to understand the market for public sector employees. I think this is the first formal compensation benchmarking effort the town has done. And the net result, or the sort of initial finding of that was that the town had been paying below market rates for jobs with similar titles and responsibilities in the past. So we used the outcome of that study to work on payroll in a couple phases. We took action to change the pay scale for a couple of key positions in the fiscal year 24 budget, and then last year we tried to take the same approach to the entire payroll to kind of adjust pay rates for job descriptions across the organization. So I want to thank the council for supporting us in that. Go ahead, was that a question?
I think that was a cough.
So anyways, going into this budget year, Over the past couple of years, I've wanted to get a little bit more formal council buy-in on this strategy. To support our existing employees, retain them, and help the town remain competitive when we do have job openings. I've said in recent meetings that I think this work to improve the pay scale has yielded some pretty good benefits. We've had good results and we've posted jobs recently, at least our full-time jobs. Part-time work in local government continues to be fairly difficult to fill those positions in some cases. At least we've got a shovel this year. But so what I thought we would do is just ask the council to consider the list of comparable entities that we bring into this benchmarking tool. And the way the tool works, I think we've talked about this before, but there are a couple of variables that we can manipulate. One is the job descriptions. It's not going to really manipulate that. We take the job descriptions we have and we plug them in. We assign job values, and there's this really cool template that we use to sort of rank the difficulty and responsibility and hazards associated with each position, and then spits out a number that we're able to compare to. We can then compare job descriptions and job values to other entities, and then finally what we do is we choose comparable employers. And so we have comparable employers, we have the job descriptions that match ours, or titles that match ours from those entities, and then we have that job value that again is just a factor in the computation. So in this staff report, it looks like 100 pages, 159, 160 of the council packet lists out these comparable entities, and the reasons we chose these entities, there are a number of them, but to name just a few, we obviously we're in the Salt Lake County or the Wasatch Front metro area job market. Our employees live in Salt Lake County. I don't know if we've had any live in Summit County or what's the county's dwelling? Yeah. For instance, but our employees by and large live in the region. So that's where our employees bear the cost of living in this region. We're a small municipal government. We have a police department. A lot of small municipal governments own police departments. They contract with a metro provider such as UPD or the sheriff. And in rural Utah, they often use county sheriff. We're a ski area or recreation gateway community. So we know folks who have a background working in communities like Alton. And then finally, we look for entities that have similar job titles. So we're a police department, but we also have dispatchers. And police departments in the Salt Lake Valley, by and large, do not have dispatchers. They use, if they have a local police department, they use the Valley Emergency Communication Center as their dispatch center. So that's kind of a unique, relatively unique job description out there in the regional market. I won't read through this list of cities, but we feel pretty good that this list of cities and special districts, I guess I don't know if is back a special district technically. Well, we've got a number of cities. We've got UBD and we've got VEC, and we think that is about as good a spread as we can find. We've got mid-sized municipalities, a large municipality. We've got some resort communities. Brian Head is really like we always struggle to find comparables in so many contexts. Brian Head is about as close as I think we can get in Utah. They've got a public safety department or police department. They've got a ski area. It's small. It's surrounded by public land. Totally different regional economy.
Does Brighton have a town staff?
They do. They have a town manager.
So that would be I know they don't have a police department, but that would be the only one. Well, I would add that to this list.
Brian Head?
No, I would say Brighton.
Right.
Brighton. They don't have a police department, but they have a town council. Do they have a town staff? They have one.
They have a clerk and they contract with
Okay.
somebody who happens to be the assistant city manager in Midvale to do like that thing.
Never mind.
But I think they're looking to have one.
That'd be the only one that maybe not on the list right away, but maybe to put it on. The only reason I say that, and I'm glad Brian is on there, is that how much do you feel, after Mike talked about the road traffic and dealing with the road, affects the employees of the town of Alta? Because that's like something that like none of these communities have that comparison. And I know that like in the ski area, that's like a big issue for our employees. And so that was the only reason I was thinking Brighton is because they only have one employee, but as they maybe grow, we
Yeah.
could maybe put them on our list down the road. Brian Head might have a little traffic, but I don't think it's anything like what we have.
No, I doubt it. Yeah.
But that was the only other thing that I was thinking of is maybe trying, but you're right, their staff of one might not be a great
Yeah, they
comparison.
use the municipal services district. That's the equivalent to their town
Okay.
administration. So that's like every county building.
But she raises an interesting point. You know, to me, this question is so zoomed in on a tiny sliver of the Swallow report. And, I'm as, you're saying, blessed that this is the right 10 names, but you didn't tell us what names you didn't pick. We don't know what the other names are. We don't know really how comparable the job responsibilities are from town to town. If you're the town manager in Sandy City and there's 300,000 people, is that really the same as being the town manager in Alta where there's 200 people? So, I mean, it's so zoomed in on, here's these 10 names, bless them, without telling us anything about the other names you could have picked or what the other cities look like. So it's just a little hard for me to get my arms around it. I think if we could take a little more holistic report to this, or a little more holistic approach to the Swallow report, I'm very, very much in favor of using the Swallow report to help define our compensation. I just find it really super hard to look at this tiny sliver of it and say, okay, bless this, because I don't know how it fits in the rest of it. I don't know what the rest of the report's saying. So I personally would be in favor of not, everybody doesn't have to read it, but those of us who would like to read it, I think would be in a better position to endorse what you're doing if we had a more of an overview of the Swallow report. Like, I'd like to actually read the report.
The other thing I find interesting is that we're talking about wages, but we're not really talking about how much tax bases each of these communities have, which I kind of is the same thing I think you're getting at, John. Sandy City with a larger population is much different, but how different is the tax basis between our community with, our business and houses and stuff. So I have a hard time like, oh, so we're talking about money, yet nowhere on this list is money mentioned.
I think I feel I'm okay with the list because I think like Chris said, a lot of our applicants would come from the valley. So I mean, if you're gonna be applying for, let's say a town staff position, you're probably gonna be living in Sandy or Draper or Cotton Heights, and you're gonna be comparing it to a job you can get down there. So I'm glad to see those on the list. And I'm also glad you included some other small towns like Moab's Medium. I think it's a great, I think it's a great list. I don't have anything wrong with it.
Just a little bit
Yeah,
of
well,
history.
I think tying to what Carolyn's, I'm sorry, was somebody speaking there?
Yeah,
Tying to what
yeah,
Carolyn says, it's also what's the tax basis, but how many employees are there? All the things that meld to be part of how much should we be, what should the compensation for this job be? So I think comparing our town to these other towns over a broader range of characteristics, total number of employees, the Carolyn's tax base. Those, there just seems like there's more to the story, and it's hard to just bless the city or bless this list without seeing the bigger picture of the Swallow report.
So just a little background on this list. We didn't just create this list last week. This is no, just hear me out. So this list was basically developed out of the principles that Chris just earlier identified. It's gone through several renditions over the last couple of years of updating the Swallow framework. The council actually asked for some of these entities to be added on and some even to be taken off at various meetings. And so I think if the council would like to give us more direction on what principles you want us to look at, we can go back to the drawing board. The other thing is that these entities are all in the technology.net system. That is basically what we're using to like bounce and get information and inputs that we put into the framework. So.
And I'm all for having you be fairly paid, absolutely,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, that's not.
No, I know, but I mean, it's kind of like, I didn't mean my comment.
I don't think anybody took it that way.
Okay.
Well, I guess what I would say is that if there are, like, let's say, public sector employees, other municipal governments or special districts in Utah that you are interested to see us consider in the mix, they're probably in the system. They probably use this tool to do their own compensation planning annually. So we can certainly incorporate others, and that was really what we were hoping to get out of this, that was the key result we were seeking with this discussion with the council. So we can certainly take that input and
I just don't know how we thumbs up endorse the list without seeing what the other possibilities are. You know, you say, well, if there's something else you want to add, well, how do we know what we might want to add? Because we don't know what the list of things or entities you didn't select looks like. That's where.
Frank wants to say
Yeah,
something.
John, let me sort of chime in, and as you may remember, I'm the one that kicked off the fact that we needed to do something like this. At the same time, I think, let me rephrase your comments. Here's what we want out of compensation. We want something that's mechanistic, that makes a decision for us, so we don't actually have to do any work. I have never, and I've been through lots of benchmarking studies, seen that happen. It requires a much more holistic understanding of the compensation philosophy, which we don't have one defined. It also requires understanding of history. There are a number of artifacts, what I consider artifacts in our compensation philosophy payment, like, you know, we have this bonus that I think originated with Mayor Levitt that sort of sticks around, but it's not comparable to any of the areas that we're recruiting from. So I think it's probably worth having not a deeper dive into how do we want to pay people, what's some of the values and philosophy around that, how much do we want to align with our recruiting area, which is the most relevant part for us, that's your Draper account and stuff like that. That is not a discussion that we can have in 10 minutes in this kind of meeting. So maybe a workshop, maybe it's, you know, one of the topics, if you get another half day strategic planning, maybe it's even postponed until the strategic workshop next year. But I do agree that trying to sign off on one narrow mechanical sliver of the compensation stuff is probably not good enough for the town council to understand what they're actually signing off on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is all great input. We do need to develop the budget, and the first step in developing our budget is always making a compensation plan. So I don't.
We can deal with it this year.
We certainly can. This is the foundation of our comparables exercise. This is basically, this is the list we've been using, so anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like you've been using this list for a number of years, but it's been had edits to it over the years, and we are approaching our budgeting time, so I think, like Craig said, we do probably need to have a bigger discussion about this, but as far as using this list for the current budget cycle, I don't see anything wrong with it. I just had the question about Brighton, just because if they ever do someday get more of a.
Yeah.
A town, it would be our more, comparable. But like I said, I'm glad to see Brian Head on here, because I think that that's our closest one. But yeah, I mean, we're never gonna find something that's gonna completely align without that, like with that, and so I think that. I mean, I feel fine with you, like, this is the list you guys have been using, I would just, for this budget cycle, but yeah, I think we have a further discussion about it.
Well, maybe the mistake is in trying to get us to do this narrow approval, and we should just back up and acknowledge that, yeah, over time, we'd like to refine the process and educate the council more as to the more holistic view. And for now, there's nothing really compelling about we have to approve this one narrow component of the budget process. We could just approve the wage increases as a percentage increase over the prior year when you guys have done all the commiserating. I'm just reluctant to vote on for something that we just know so little about. I'd rather just vote for the wage increase as a number and, assume you guys derived it correctly. So I appreciate your attempt to draw us into the process more, but I think we need to look at it more holistically.
I think that sounds fine, John. This was a little bit of a toss, admittedly, I wanted to give the council.
Mark, could you take your conversation someplace else?
Certainly.
Well, thank you.
I wanted to give the council a little bit more of a bite at the apple, and it was partially, John, because of I know you wanted to know more about the wage cycle. So we have to think about how to do that, and I want to do that, so I hope that's good enough to move forward and start working on the 26 budget, and we'll keep talking about it.
Right. We're providing enough feedback here, and let's go forth and do the 26 budget.
Yeah. Okay.
I like that. Does that work for you, Elise?
Yeah.
I think we're there. I think we're not gonna take any action at this point.
Sounds fine.
Yep. Okay, in that case, I think this is Chris or maybe Molly again, December 2025 Hanford water line project.
Okay, it looks like I'm 8 minutes behind, so I apologize for that, and I'm gonna try not to linger on this. This is a bit more concrete. It's coming right down the pike. We are moving towards implementing a major project to improve the town of Alta water system this summer. We've been talking about it a bit at a high level, and we need to talk about it at a much lower and more granular level. First, I just want to provide a little bit of an update on the planning projects. Let's see, to be able to slide it, so I think you've got the presentation or something about it. There. Oh, any questions?
Good job.
All right. So, the status of the water and sewer master plan project is that we have a draft capital improvement plan, or a draft list of capital improvements that the engineers have recommended. The process to this point has involved updating a water model. They've developed a sewer model, which we've never had in the past, or at least we haven't had one so recently that we have one in the office, so to speak. We gave them the 2014 Forest Green capital improvements analysis document, which had like 7 or 8 projects intended to improve fire flows and system redundancy. At the time, we were deficient in fire flows. We still are, according to the updated water model. And so basically the engineers took took that list of projects as well as kind of a narrative list of potential projects on the sewer into their planning exercise. And it yielded, for the time being, just 3 projects on the water system and 2 on the sewer system. We've got the Crosstow water line we'll talk more about, what we're hoping to do this summer. A new storage tank, so that we can meet fire code for required flows. And then a project to create a loop system down near Hellgate. On the sewer, we've got the infamous gold miner's daughter lot parking lot sags. So they're proposing to replace that, and then there's apparently a segment of sewer line down by Hellgate that also needs to be replaced. So I have the budget amounts up here, got some asterisks on the cost projections for the Crosstow project. We'll talk about that in a minute. On the bottom of the slide is a very tentative, updated, out-year capital project cost projection based on some of these numbers from the engineers. So that's something adopted. I just kind of thumbed it in there when I was putting these slides together. We're looking at a bit more on the sewer. We're looking at a bit less on the water, but these numbers are all subject to change because we have a lot of comments on their draft project list. And we don't have the responses to those yet. So some caveats on this, the Crosstow project cost estimates, the numbers in there were, I believe it's 540,000. Those are likely high, and the reason for that is that we are assuming that we're going to work with Alpha Skiria to essentially be our contractor to do this project. And we think the cost that the Skiria will charge us to do that work is going to be the market. We think it's going to be a pretty good deal. Not sure of that yet, but their projections are based on what it costs to do these projects in the valley when you hire a typical general contractor in the Salt Lake Valley. So that's a key caveat. One thing I want to clarify is that this planning effort has not turned out to be a project to figure out a long-term capital replacement and funding strategy. What we are doing is a little more narrow, which we are planning to resolve existing known deficiencies in fire flow and in storage. We have a couple key components of the water system, sewer systems that are badly deteriorated. Some of those appear in the engineer's recommendations at this point. Some of them we're asking them to. There's one project from the 2014 study that didn't make it on their list. We're just double checking with them why that is. So like I said a moment ago, the list of projects may grow. So again, provided comments to them. The topic of improving water and providing sewer to the Emma Heights or West Grizzly neighborhood has come up at council meetings before. I've asked the engineers to consider the cost and benefit of that as well. It didn't make the draft list. I mean, it's because I didn't ask that explicitly enough early in the project. We have done a little bit of work to project potential future growth on the system. The common assumption is in Alpha is that there's just not that much potential future growth. There are some major constraints on growth, such as developable land, such as culinary water. Zoning is a constraint on growth, and under our current zoning, we're relatively well built out. And of course, because we're still working on existing deficiencies. We have deficiencies in the system to serve the development that is connected to it now. But we will wrap up the project with a projection of future growth. And some recommendations for how to address that as we look at the future of these systems. So on to the project for this next summer. So this is from basically a project from the 2014 study. It did kind of make the cut with Hanson Allen Moose, our current civil engineers working on the project. You can see it basically runs the length of the transfer tow. The western terminus is in the Buckhorn lot, and the eastern terminus is going to be here in the Albion lot in front of the cat shop. And that whole long run of pipe along the Crossdow. He's gonna go and entrench the ski area. He's already planning to excavate to install, to replace some utilities, I believe, and then install and upgrade some snowmaking infrastructure. If it weren't for that, we might not be doing this project this summer, but it's just too good of an opportunity to save costs and reduce disruption in the corridor paths up. So the goals of this project are to improve fire flows and add a really solid system redundancy. We did not initially plan to run it along that blue segment. We were just gonna kind of tee it into the town of Alta water line that comes down the Alta Lodge Hill. But by running it over there to intersect with another pipe that comes out of Westford Hill, we can get a much better redundancy benefit and a better fire flow improvement. There's a couple technical features. Pressure reducing vault is, a big concrete vault that's gonna go on the ground, probably near again the bottom of the Alta Lodge Roto Hill. The only segment of the project that the ski area is not gonna excavate and potentially assemble and kind of backfill for us is that segment into the Albion lot. So we're working pretty hard right now to figure out procurement of additional labor in the form of the general contractor. This is I think it's more than an aspirational timeline. We're basically on this timeline. Ski area is gonna start working on this project in the middle of May. They'll probably start working on it before that, but we really need to be ready to go, ready to mobilize. On May 12th is the date that I got from the director of Slopes and Surfaces, I believe. So here the milestones, we're talking about this with council now. We're hoping to have something like a draft RFP this week. We really need the final design back from the engineer with the bid schedule to know how to sort of fill in the blanks on a solicitation, but it's likely this is going to be a relatively narrow scope of work. We're not asking someone to come in and do a huge excavation. We do need to order materials, so that's a whole other procurement question. The Forest Service, I really never want to be someone who bags on the Forest Service. The Forest Service, we submitted, we should have submitted to the Forest Service on this project months before we did, but we made that submission in September, I believe. And I'm pretty confident we're gonna have that final approval in hand in March, and it's basically the way it could work is that it's essentially just an amendment to this series approval to do the project. That's gonna be the best for everyone, I think. So we'll talk more about funding and whether we need to amend the budget in a minute, but March is probably the last opportunity we have to do a budget amendment. If we need to do so in order to, enter the contracts and order materials and so forth. And then, we hope to be rolling in May and done before the snow flies. Hopefully September 30th, so Gabe can mow the grass or whatever needs to happen in the corridor. So funding options, I just wanted to chew on this a little bit with the council. At least we do need to amend the budget in March. We are planning a budget amendment in March for a couple other reasons. Again, the project may cost up to $540,000. We think that is really high. I just don't know how much lower it's going to be realistically. But that is kind of the planning number for now. We have several options to fund the project. We have a fair amount of cash on hand right now, about $490,000. If we follow through on the fiscal year 25 water fund budget, the balance as of June 30th is projected to be $351,000. So we need to keep cash on hand to operate the system. So there are a lot of moving parts and pieces here, a lot of things to consider in terms of when we pay bills. But we may need to think about borrowing money from another source depending on how it all works out. So we're really fortunate to have talked about some of these mechanisms in January. If we do need money to supplement the cash we have in the water fund, probably the most expedient thing to do and probably the cheapest thing to do in terms of servicing debt is to borrow money from the general fund. Obviously, we have a loan from the general fund to the water fund in the books right now. We could rewrite the terms of that, if that's the direction we want to go. We could potentially get state money and we could potentially float a bond to fund this project. I think there are some reasons to assume we're not going to do that this time around. And the reasons for that is that we have a lot more expensive projects planned and execute in the next few years. Water fund projects, sewer fund projects, we got to replace buildings. And we only have so many times we can go to each respective trough. That's might not necessarily be true, but I think we would all agree we don't want to take out a bond every single year. It'd be politically challenging and really expensive and pretty chaotic on the bookkeeping side. So this is a big project. It's the biggest water fund project we will have done in many years. But it's not so big that we absolutely need to go out to bond or get a loan from the state. So I think the pathway looks pretty good on this.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, of course.
Was there a pause there?
Yeah, go for it.
I think this is the right recommendation. I like the recommendation. The one comment I'd make is, because the work's gonna mostly be done in fiscal 26, we're not gonna prepay the work up front. So I actually think the projected year-end 26 CapEx budget is probably the more relevant number because the bills will come in 26 and the bulk of it will be applied against the 26 balance, which gives the CapEx, water CapEx fund a chance to grow by another 100 grand or so during the course of 26. So a little bit more cushion, a little bit not quite as tight, but I think you're going to be able to do it just out of the water fund with maybe some due to from coverage during the course of 26. But by the end of 26, I think the CapEx fund is going to be back to having a positive balance so long as this project is 450 grand. If it's 550 grand, then it's going to be right at zero at the end of 26. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and because that number is high, we're pretty confident it's high. Maybe we should have more comfort with that assumption. And I need to spend more time rather with your rates tool, John. I am like, I'm not fluent in it. I'm barely proficient in interpreting it, using it, but it was super helpful to get it. You may know John has put a bunch of time into developing a water fund budget and rate setting projection tool that's really helpful in projecting fund balances so we know when we can afford what. So thank you for that, John, and I appreciate your support. So
yeah, and I think
anyways,
this recommendation is just right. So good job.
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, the recommendation is to fund using the water fund, the cash we have on hand. Again, we have to determine how much we need to save in the account and keep in the account at all times to fund operations and maintenance. And I guess I'm taking this, I'm taking the retreat, and this conversation we're having now is an indication the council is relatively comfortable with the notion of an interfund loan if that becomes necessary, but hopefully there's a way we can work it out with contractors and vendors so that
I would think the reaction here is saying full speed ahead.
I do have a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I imagine that that I'm not all about noise and disruption and that kind of thing, and so I worry a little bit about folks who have perhaps planned some weddings and some events, and so I'm hoping that everybody involved in that scenic disruption is aware. And I know that there's, and you probably know better than I do, like a daycare, or there's something cute, or there's like a kid's summer camp. And they
Yeah, they work about all that out in this area on where they can go and not go.
okay, so you've already got all that planned. Okay, great.
Yeah, well, that's a really a fair point. When you live in the valley and they replace the water main under the arterial surface street, you get flyers in the mailbox and so on and so forth. So that's a fair point.
I just wanted to say that I think that we have been needing to do, we've been due for doing a water project. I think that I'm happy we're focusing on something that is gonna improve our fire flow, because I mean, if anything, those fires in California show that we are gonna need that if that happens. I know when we had the fires from the gas leak issue down on the bypass road, that we had water goes fast. So I'm glad to see us moving forward with this. I'm also want to thank the ski area for letting us share the trench. I mean, that, I don't think we could do this project, it would cost us a lot more.
Yeah.
And so I think that is really important to just say that. I just want to thank the ski area for that.
Thanks to Mike and Tom and
Yeah.
the ski area, they've really kind of paved the way. It's not the greatest metaphor, but they've been very helpful and yes, I think that's correct. We're gonna get a really good deal.
Yeah.
Minimize disruption. I'm particularly sensitive to the scenic impacts.
Well, that's the thing that I like about sharing the trench too, is that this is gonna happen already, and the fact that we're gonna not have to open another trench and do another project in an
Same
area
trench.
that's a common place that our residents like to walk. I think that it's also I'm glad that we have partnered with this area on this.
I could make, if I could make one comment, this is an undertaking that this town really hasn't done before in terms of its scope and magnitude. And, this is a big deal,
Yeah.
so. Okay, we're ready to move on? All right, let's, now we're going to have Craig step out of his role as town treasurer and step into his role as chairman of the Canyon Guard Corporation. Use this thing?
That's
The forward backwards, just not the plan.
Right, so.
This is the Canyon Guard presentation.
And. Okay, I'm not gonna do this. First slide is very simple, same slide we had last year, we changed the year and the date, that's it. And I'm gonna, we don't have long to talk, and what I really wanna do is get some feedback. So we're planning on only talking for 10 of our 20 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some questions and dialogues for the last 10 minutes. What that means is that I'm gonna make 4 really quick points. The first is that Canyon Guard is changing our focus from why we think that gondola is a bad investment to syndicating solutions. And when I say syndicating solutions, I mean up and down this valley and involving all of the resorts and the businesses and the other people. And I will echo Mike's comment earlier today, which is UDOT is not the enemy here. There are people that we need to work with. And I think that the best way to do that is to syndicate the solutions among the various businesses and municipalities that are here. Second, we've watched the development of Big Cottonwood Canyon and observed how they successfully coordinated multiple municipalities, business interests, and effective citizens to endorse a wide range of solutions, which seem to be carrying great weight in the actual BCC transportation plan by UDOT. Here in Little Cottonwood Canyon, most of the discussions have been around the gondola, not alternative solutions. So we believe that we need to switch to that, and we think Canyon Guard can help in syndicating alternative solutions. Third, perhaps most important, is your voice matters. It's critical to any syndication of solutions
and has already had some impact. I took the resolution from last year and I broke it down into 14 different asks. And then I scored them about how far we were in each of these things. And what you'll see is that some of them, we haven't even started. Some of them are already done. And some of them are actually work in progress and proceeding well. So your voice does matter, and we need to hear it as part of this dialogue. Fourth, and perhaps most important for today, where's Charlie? There he is. Come on up, Charlie. We have a new executive director. His name is Charlie Luke. We're throwing him into the deep end of the pool by forcing him to do the rest of this presentation. Which is pretty impressive, given that he only started work on Friday. So, given that he's only had 4 working days so far, he may not know all the answers to your questions yet. But we do have some other experts here. We've got Margaret and Emily and Sydney here and Eva in the back. So if it's out of his depth because he has only been here for 4 days, we'll judge him on that, but then we'll chime in and have the other people answer the questions. So Charlie has a long background in community service and affecting real change through political action. So Charlie, it's yours.
Thanks, Craig. So I know that Craig sent you the presentation that we're gonna have, so I'm not gonna read through all of it, I'm gonna gloss over it. And to Craig's point, I really wanna make sure that this is an open discussion and that we move forward. Again, my name is Charlie Luke. I am a 25-year government and public affairs professional. I served for 2 terms on the Salt Lake City Council, so I understand kind of what it's like to be in your shoes. And I'm really honored to take on this role at Canyon Guard. I grew up at the base of Big Cottonwood Canyon, went to Brighton High School. I consider both Little Cottonwood and Big Cottonwood the backyard that I grew up in. And so preservation and protection is really, really important. But at the same time, understanding what the livable realities are. Alta is not just a ski area. You have residents that you need to take care of, that you need to pay attention to, and you also have employees. Some who live here, but a lot who travel and are really dependent on this. Canyon Guard is an advocacy organization, not an opposition organization. Our goal is to focus on real solutions. All of those solutions may not work, but we feel that it is imperative for an organization like ours to give you guys real decisions and things that you can, and decisions that we can make. Over the past year, Canyon Guard has spent a lot of time through our intern efforts and our volunteer efforts on research, on solution development, and on education and advocacy. Those are the things that we're going to continue to focus on this coming year and in the future as well. We can go to the next slide. One of the examples that we have is that UDOT has actually begun work in Big Cottonwood Canyon on different solutions. I don't have the remote to move. Oh, you have it? If you can just move it to the next one. So UDOT has already begun looking at different solutions in Big Cottonwood Canyon, none of which involve a gondola. Now there are some reasons for this. There are some, different, if you can go to the next slide, some differences between the canyons, but really the issue that we are really interested in is that first and foremost, UDOT's looking at enhanced bus service and resort bus stops, tolling and a mobility hub, which amounts to roughly $90 million. A drop in the bucket compared to what the first choice was for the gondola. So looking at the differences between Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, of course there are going to be differences. Of course the canyons are different. Of course the towns are different. But the solutions don't necessarily have to be. Both are avalanche prone. Little Cottonwood is of course more avalanche prone. But there are different things that we can look at. If we can go to the next slide. One of the things that I think is one of the most attractive, if we can go to the actual, jump over this, go to the next one, is the vehicle occupancy numbers. if we were to focus on different ways to reduce vehicle occupancy, we know for a fact that is going to have a direct result.
Increasing.
Increasing, yeah. not
Yeah, right.
So we have, our current occupancy right now is about 1.89. We feel that we can get that up. Now, what, with different, what the number is gonna look like, with 3 passengers, it could, be in the area around 30 to 7%. We just don't know. But we know that it's going to be bigger. We know that it is going to have an impact. We also know, if we can go to the next slide, that the solutions that we need to be focusing on now are near-term solutions. We can't just look at 20 years down the road. There are real issues that are impacting you as residents, your visitors, and your employees who live here. And so it's really important that we get to the bottom of some of these. So really what I want to do now is just kind of open it up. I know that, you have worked closely with Craig, you've worked closely with Canyon Guard. And I'm gonna be reaching out to each of you as well. I want to set up time so that we can get to know each other and figure out exactly what you're looking for. But of the different solutions that we've talked about, what are some of the things that the town is interested in seeing us pursue?
I wanna figure out how to keep the main line open more.
Okay,
I don't know if that's a study, I don't know if that's trying to get some avalanche sheds, I don't know why the main line wasn't part of the original study. I mean, that EIS came about, what, 6 or 7 years ago now, it's been a while. Maybe it wasn't on their radar, but I feel like we could figure something out there, like.
okay.
I mean, the main line is our biggest issue during congestion. When it's closed, we are at the whim of Snowbird. And I feel like that would be a very simple, I mean, it would be expensive, whatever it's gonna be, but I feel like that would be less expensive than a gondola. And it would maybe be effective in the near term.
All right.
But that would be something I'd like to see. I noticed on Craig's progress, you had a little quarter circle done for a mainline study, but yeah, I think if you guys could figure out a way to advocate, I mean, we've mentioned it as a town, but I think that would be.
The reason we had a quarter on that was
Yeah.
because it's one of the areas that we're looking at getting a grant to actually do something like that.
I worry a little bit about tolling as a resident, as a living person. I do work for the ski area. I worry that UDOT has mentioned that they can't necessarily do tolling for a certain group and not for another group, and that is a big worry. I'm worried the employees that work up here, the tolling could impact them. So that's one that I'm a little hesitant about tolling. I'm not against it, I'm just a little like, can we work with that?
And again, we're not endorsing any of these right now. Our goal is to just, get the discussion going and provide, some conversation so that we can kind of steer that conversation in a more productive way.
Yeah, and I think that's why the thing about tolling that UDOT has talked to us about, it's been a while since I think they've talked to us, but I mean, they said that they can't treat different groups differently, and so that was my biggest holdup with the tolling. And I don't know if you guys would have the ability to research that a bit more, but that would be something that would be nice to look at.
Okay, how about HOV?
I think my main is that, so I've lived in the canyon for over 20 years and I drive at very odd hours and drive the canyon a lot, sometimes multiple times in a day. And I will say that the thing that makes me the most nervous and agitated is the bad drivers and the bad cars. And so one of the reasons why I advocate tolling or have in the past is to somehow decrease the number of inept vehicles, perhaps driven by inept drivers. And so I look at buses as a solution, although I'm curious to hear Mike earlier today say, oh, those bus drivers are scared. They don't want to go more than 20 down the road and I'm the idiot who tries to pass them. And that is a bad solution. So I'm interested in the high occupancy vehicle solution. band buses, something that are reliable to come up and down. I don't know about different times of the day where there's only buses allowed, or a lane where there's only buses, and I don't know. I don't know what the right solution is, but getting rid of some of those cars is, I'm interested in that.
Sure.
I think it's gonna be a variety.
Yeah, no, please, I was actually, let me hear from Roger and then I'll come back.
Matt, come up front so they can hear you on now.
This sounds like it's nuts, but there's some elements in our society where not only is the vehicle authorized and has to meet certain standards, but the operator has to meet certain standards. Now, I don't know if that's ever been employed for private vehicles. I'm very familiar with how it is in the aviation industry.
Yeah. Well, I can pretty much say that it's not, you know, that is a government regulation that I think the state would have some issues with, but at the same time, I think it's definitely worth talking about because it is a potential solution. It's something to look at. So
it's a wild idea.
But you know what? So is the Congo. So, Mike. Yeah. Yeah.
So just on, you know, I think we have to remember 60% of people that come to Alton during the winter are not from Utah. So they've traveled here in some way and they're trying to get here, and so many of them have no idea how to drive a vehicle in the canyon. So even to give them the right tires, vehicle, we see them wide enough and drive down. So we need options, easy options that they can use to get up and down the canyon. That's there. So that's one point. I'm concerned that we don't make it too easy for more people to get here. We are fairly, there are more people who want to come to Alton on some days than we are willing to accommodate. You know, we have a limited capacity. We don't want to ruin the ski experience. I'm concerned that while we do things to increase capacity in vehicles or or whatever, there's still, for every car you take off the road, there's 10 waiting to come. And that's my concern. We, you know, how do we do this in a way that we don't just add more people to this canyon, end up with the same number of vehicles still coming up and down here? Because it's just something to be aware of, you know, we have to be careful that we don't, well, we think we're gonna take, and then we have to remember too, that when you look at the number of cars coming up and down this canyon, you know, a significant portion of them are supporting the businesses, their shuttles, their food trucks, their people coming to service a home here. I mean, they come up and down, they're part of that mix. And they're not, I mean, there's only 4,000 parking spots and there's 6,000 vehicles coming up and down canyons and things. So I tell you, there's 2,000 vehicles coming for other purposes. You know, either dropping off people or whatever it is. So there's a lot of parts and pieces to that are there. My concern about tolling is it impacts employees, impacts residents, it impacts the people from Utah that are less prosperous and want to come skiing. And put some restrictions on them, and it doesn't restrict the number of cars that come in. It just adds a surtax, a tax on top of it for people. So that's my concerns about tolling. I think there are reservations I think are far more effective than tolling. And it's there because, you know, there's a limited number. If you don't have a reservation, you can't come. They don't, right up the canyons and find out there's not a parking spot and try to park somewhere. So that's kind of our view a little bit on the tolling side of things. Is, you know, we're already charging people to park, tolls is another thing on top of it. It's interesting, last Saturday when we were fully out of parking and sobered out of parking, we had 52 people that chose to come and park illegally and pay $250 fine and bill that a night about it. Because they were in that class that could afford that and they wanted to come ski. It was a really good day. 52 vehicles or 52 vehicles for a bit more people. They could have split the cost.
Mike, do you see the metered merge as consistent with the goals you just talked about? Because it handles the same number of cars more efficiently?
Yes, I mean, I think any way we can merge traffic better from Alta exiting the Snowbird, it works. But it doesn't work when the road conditions are the worst when we close the main line. That's the, of all the things that we could have, if we could keep the main line open for the exit, we would have significant improvement over where we are right now. It's what brings us to our need. In that regard, you know, we're not. When we have an Alta, we have room for more years, yes, we're not looking at. About 25%, no. We have days where, you know, we are full.
Saturday, last Saturday.
Almost every Saturday in there, this year's been a little tricky with the road conditions. But last year, like early last year, we didn't want any more people on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. In public, we were full, and it was a good balance, and because we had little road conditions, traffic went pretty well, but it snows and we put people on the worst section of road into the Cottonwood Canyon, the bypass road. The steepest, the slickest, the most congested, the most entry points. And somehow, if we can find a solution that helps us to address that, keep that mainline traffic flowing. Ideally, like I said, if we could do metering or something, allow all of the Alta traffic to merge the low entry one, it would keep traffic moving in and out.
I was gonna say things that the Canyon Guard could like focus on right now and not 20 years from now would be like, yeah, I did a mainline study. I think the traction law, which it's close, but I mean, it has to get brought forward.
Yeah, it's
so.
in rules right now. It's supposedly gonna come out of rules at the next rule, but it's moving.
And then I think what Mike talked about earlier, trying to get information to the Forest Service about the roadside parking that's been happening down at Snowbird. Because I think that we went from parallel parking to 45-degree parking and we just added more cars. And we just need more voices that let the Forest Service know that is happening.
And in that process, maybe if we can find a way to say, let them replace that parking somewhere and shut it down. You know, that's another alternative, you know, but, you know, we're talking about, you know, can you put a little barrier between entry 1 and entry 4 that doesn't allow you all the U-turns? You know, as a way to help do that. There's some logistics and all that stuff that's gonna be figured out. Those are, you know, like we always said, there's some things here that weren't considered or overlooked in the EIM.
Yeah.
You know, that they were, it was just like, we've got the bypass road, we don't have a problem. Let's go on it, and it was, you know, it wasn't delved into the depth, and so maybe it's an opportunity, EIS, I don't think it's an opportunity for us to focus on these things and try to get them taken care of. You know, out, well, that's all.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Stuff.
Thanks, Mike. And again, this is exactly what I want Canyon Guard to be. You know, I could have, you know, we could stand up and talk to you and say, you know, these are the solutions that we have. We've shared them with you. It's more important to really keep the discussion flowing and to make sure that we're able to collaborate and work together. The final slide before I go,
Steve wanted to.
Two questions, yeah, Eva and then Margaret.
So, I hear a lot of concern about tolling, when I talked to UDOT, regarding the BCC plan. They were saying that they were thinking that the, tolling will be, congestion dependent, so the tolling will only come into effect when there is red snake. So likely it will just be certain holidays or weekends, so. And even certain hours, not the whole day, so I'm wondering if that would make tolling more appealing to all of you. And it also seems like there is technology to differentiate between people. You know, certain employees can get a special kind of scan in certain town. So I'm just curious, because I hear Mike and Elise, you know.
Well, we have, if we're gonna be tolling, we have to do it in a way that doesn't further congest traffic, if we can't slow it down. And our understanding has just been told that because it's a state road and in national forest, they said it has to be applied to everybody. Now, that may not be true. We don't know.
And that's part of what this, you know, Further
We need
discussion.
to find that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Josh, I mean, it's been a year since we talked with UDOT about the tolling, but I can't remember who it was that presented it to us, but. They just said that they couldn't maybe differentiate between an employee or a resident versus someone else that was coming up, they can't treat them differently, that might not be true,
Yeah.
but that's just information I've been going based off of, and that's my hesitancy on it.
And then what do you do if we reserve that and people come and they pay a toll?
Yeah.
Come up to Canyon, they go, hey, I paid a toll, where's my parking spot?
Right.
Where's my right, I paid a toll, then are you gonna try to refund all those people because they're gonna go back down, they don't have a place to park? There's just some logistics.
Reservation, it's another tax.
But that's the problem, can you? Snowbird doesn't have reservations.
I think
So we do.
my other worry with the tolling was where they were gonna do it, they were proposing doing the tolling at White Pine. Which was like also didn't make any sense to me, so again, those things could change, maybe they will, but that would be if you guys wanted to find that information
Yeah,
out from
exactly.
UDOT, that would be something that would be great, that would be helpful, cause. I like you said, UDOT has kind of said statements otherwise.
You could do tolling in a way that if you had a reservation or permit to park in the town of Alpha, you don't get tolled. It's.
Margaret?
My question was to you, Mike, and that was, do you have any insight into how the resorts in Big Cottonwood in the town coordinated so that reservations were required for the whole area? And whether or not we could apply that?
It was as, well, when we talked to them, we encouraged them that they had to take care of the roadside or it wasn't gonna work. You have to do roadside between the two areas, or else you just can fill your roadside and nobody will make a reservation.
Right.
And make it worse.
Yeah.
So, may or not work on that to make that happen. Snowbird, that's why we coordinated with the town of Alpha, because we knew it wouldn't work to do reservations in just our lots. It would kill the north side and stuff in the town. So we recognize that, but Snowbird just.
And is the land in Big Cottonwood along the road, similar to the land here? In terms of right of way, UDOT and who's responsible for each?
Generally, some of the land in Snowbird is private, right up to the roadside in a few places, but the rest of it is forest, if you know right away.
The key difference over there is that both skiers are in the town of Brighton. And they both ski areas, and town of Brighton go all the way down to Mill D.
Yeah.
And both ski areas have parking reservations, so everybody up there is on board.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I think reservations are actually critical, but they can apply to buses. They can apply to a bunch of other areas as well. And if we can move the congestion up to the reservation system, then people don't get disappointed in the way that you talked about. And the other thing that we've done is we've introduced a new concept, which hasn't been talked about very much before, which is when we talk about tolling, it's always about economic, and so then you made the point that a lot of my customers are pricing elastic and it's not gonna affect. That's why we're introducing the concept of, well, maybe we have restricted hours. That if you're not coming up in a vehicle that has 3 or more passengers, you don't get to come during those hours. So
We couldn't split it. We couldn't split that, just so you know.
that's fine.
I mean, it's really hard to implement, given the weather conditions here in Canada.
Yep, understood.
Okay, well, Mike.
One more, yeah, sorry, I know, I've gone over, I apologize.
Yeah,
I apologize for taking this further
And
over.
you guys, I don't think they're having trouble hearing you guys on the,
Yeah.
who are participating remotely.
So Mike Moran, Town Marshal. Just a couple quick comments. I'm here to tell you that relationships with this community and your daughter is great at the operations level. Okay, forget the political level. It's critical that we maintain those good relationships. We need our partners to view us as allies 24/7. I'm concerned that has been degraded. From some conversations I've had with peers. And I want to plead that everybody involved understand things that are going on behind the scenes with UDOT, things that they've got in motion, some of their goals. I'll give you an example. I don't want to pitch
sheds in this main line so hard that it comes at the expense of putting sheds at the White Pine Fingers. Because really, that's a UDOT priority, and it, you know, it happens to be one that I agree with, because if we can't control that section of the highway, people are never gonna get out in the first place. So I wanna make sure we're taking a gentle touch and we're understanding, you know, some of the priorities and who's involved in the implementation. So,
Yeah, no, thank you. And to that point, again, that's why, you know, we're really positioning Canyon Guard to be an advocacy organization, not an opposition organization. You know, we understand that those relationships are important and that, you know, that not only do we have to maintain them, but we have to strengthen them from where they have been. So, the final bit, you know, some of the things we're gonna be working on, you know, working closely with, not only Burtown, but the county, Cottonwood Heights as well, to talk about some of these different actions, Salt Lake City. Working with local businesses to talk about happy hour and AM ski passes, and running our public outreach and education. So we thank you all for your interest, and we will definitely be looking to be a collaborative partner with you moving forward.
Thank you. Where'd you get that picture?
Barbara.
Didn't I take it?
Nice, Roger.
Okay, new business, any new business for anybody from the council? It being a little bit late, then in that case, I would like to have a discussion and possible action to commence a closed meeting, to discuss matters authorized by the Utah Code Section 52-4-2051.
I move that we commence to have a closed door meeting.
Okay,
I second it.
all right, discussion? We have the vote, roll call,
You ready?
I'm ready,
Mayor Burke,
yes.
Councilmember Morgan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ansel,
Yes.
Councilmember Byrne,
Yes.
Councilmember Schilling,
Yes.
Okay, in that case, we're going to ask the public to get out. Get out.
so, yeah, so we will commence this part of the meeting.
Oh, I was like, what are you doing? Cause I
changed
just
the
that's
system.
talking so.
no.
Self-service.
All right, with the staff and Cameron, huh? Yeah. Staff, council and Cameron.
Okay, start it now. The closed session, you can, it's not recorded or anything on that, so. Here, I need to stop this.
John, I think we have to dial in. Right.
Yep.